Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us again on Adventure Habits with me, David Overton, and our sponsor, Splash Maps. It's the podcast that talks to some of the finest adventurers in the world and tries to draw out from them the habits that you can take back with you and just improve your life by adventuring more frequently and adventuring better. And I can't think of anyone better to advise on both those fronts than our friend, customer of ours, and consummate adventurer in a kayak, Will Copestake. Will, I'd love you
Hello,
to say hello
David.
to people here.
Great to hear from you. How are you doing? Good to see you.
They're all doing fine. Well, Will,
Magic.
I know you as someone who kayaks, but kayaks more than the average person. And your chosen mode of kayaking is sea. I guess I've seen quite a few videos of you on rivers, but I guess sea is your dominant thing. And in particular, it's around Scotland and Patagonia. And I suppose looking at you've got two Instagram accounts. I think one of them is about being absolutely chuffingly freezing, and that's what you like. What's that one called? And how come you like cold weather so much?
So, yeah, good question. That is my own Instagram, which is at Will Copestake. My other one being at Kayak Summer Isles, which is my business page. I like being cold and wet. I think the places, well, no, I don't. I hate being cold and wet. I like going to cold and wet places and then trying to be as comfortable as possible in them. But I think those places, I grew up in Scotland, but the places where you get those elements tend to inherently be the most interesting as well, and are worth going and exploring.
Yeah, I mean, surely you're making it with that objective. Surely you're making life hard on yourself by being in a kayak. It seems so. I mean, you're so close to that freezing cold water. You're so it's exposed, right? You're on the water. It's going to come at you. So it's all is that all about kit then? It's about there's no such thing as cold weather, just the wrong kind of kit.
I think you can still be cold in good kit. I think no, I think with kayaking's a really nice blend in that it's partly to do with the equipment, and you do need some equipment, but you can get that relatively basically. But to get good at it, you can get reasonably okay at it quite quickly, and it's all about technique. So strength definitely
Yeah.
plays an element, but if you get the technique right, anyone can do it quite fast, and then you can spend a lifetime getting safer and honing it and developing that passion in whatever way you see fits your personality. And for me, I just think that's really good fun.
Yeah.
Part
Well,
of
I think
what
you're
drew
in
me
it
into
in more.
paddling, I think, is yeah, I was going to say, what part of what I really enjoy about paddling is as coming from initially a hiking background, you can do a similar length adventure somewhere quite remote, but you can carry comfort with you, be that food
Yeah.
or something comfy like that, like a warm sleeping bag, bottle of beer, sort of thing.
Uh, well, yeah, we all have our the things that we know that we'll look forward to. I remember when Patagonia is one of your big things, and I remember actually because I've been in South America a long time before we went round the Torres, that actually having just a single cube of Cadbury's dairy milk each day was enough to keep me going because you can't carry much
Happy
stuff.
days.
Um,
No,
and so it's
yeah.
those smart, those tiny, tiny little luxuries that suddenly become very, very important. Um, but how wonderful! Listen, we should know some background about you, Will. How did you get into adventuring? And then I'll ask you about your accolades that you gained in 2015-16.
So my at the moment my net distance is about a kilometre. I was born and bred where I am now in Ullapool, and that's in the far northwest of Scotland. Bottom of my garden was the sea. I had really encouraging parents, family, friends. That we just kind of saw adventure as a normal thing. It wasn't an event to go camping or to go up a hill or to go sailing. It was just part of day to day life. And as I slowly got older, that then progressed a little bit further and a little bit farther, um, and ultimately ended up going overseas. Now, for me, that developed into going to university and doing a degree in environmental science and outdoor education, where I met like-minded people. And my first major expedition was with a chap called Remy McMurtry, where we took our university summer holiday and walked across Iceland for a month, and then camped and hitchhiked and generally explored Iceland for the following 2. That really set me on a path of wanting to do a career in the outdoors more and more. Followed that with a big expedition in Scotland, and that led to going to Patagonia. And I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between the 2 ever since.
I mean, that really does seem to be a magnet
enjoying that journey.
Yeah,
it's kind of Scotland on steroids, really.
Yeah, it's kind of more extreme. I just one of the quotes that I love on your website, you used it because you write. I mean, everyone listening to this should first of all go to your Instagram and just see the absolutely stunningly beautiful photographs that you've ever seen of people in kayaks. There's something about being at that kind of having that perspective from the water, looking back at the land, and then the extraordinary things that happen to you in the water, and somehow that, and the stuff that you've done inland as well, going down the rivers, rapids that I think should be seen as a spectator sport. You kind of find yourself like in right in the devil's toilet bowl, basically. So
I think there's a rapid near us called that.
I think there must be one in a few places. I went whitewater rafting on one that had that name, that was in Zimbabwe, and it just reminded me of that moment when I saw you.
Amazing.
Yeah, we were in a great big inflatable thing, and he's in that tiny little craft, and just looking like a stick that was just basically going to get thrown sideways and whatever, and dropped over several meters before you pop out at the other end. Hi, I'm just Will. That's
great.
Fantastic. and so from your so it's obviously an upbringing that led you towards adventure. Then you chose that as your education path as well, and then your first forays that took you out overseas, and then ultimately to Patagonia. But you picked up a couple of big accolades about 10 years ago. Can I say that to our listeners?
Yeah, it's about 10 years ago.
We're all aging, as we decided earlier.
And time creeps on.
But these are big accolades. This is the UK's adventurer and Scotland's adventurer of 2015 and 16, I think, wasn't it? So, big accolades. I mean, and what did you get those for?
So that was really a long foray in Scotland. When I left university, our degree was very centric around getting your summer mountain leadership qualification at the time. That subsequently now has slightly broadened out a little bit for future students. But we basically spent our whole university career really focusing on mountains. And so I knew when I left university, I wanted to go back to one of my original passions, which was kayaking. I hadn't really ever done that much in sea kayaks, done day trips here and there, a couple of overnights with family and friends, but really wasn't a sea paddler, was more of a river paddler as a teenager. And the idea had kind of developed into, if I kayaked around the coast of Scotland, that would cover quite a lot of Scotland's landscape by sea, and along the coast tends to be kind of the cultural hotspots, because it used to be the highway before we had all these lovely roads and paths built over the country. And then to add on to that, if I then just sliced the Munros onto the side of that, that would cover the inland part. And on paper, that sounds like a great idea. And then spent the following year trying to complete that idea, which took some time and effort, but was great fun.
And I know that there are so many listeners to this that are, they're Munro bagging, one by one, but you did them all in very close succession, and after, that circumnavigation of Scotland by kayaking, or during that, or whatever. I mean, what a feat!
Yeah, and it was good fun. The kayaking went from May through till September, and then the Munros really was kind of spanned right across the winter side, and so it was kind of like late September through till early May. And that came with the kind of highs and lows of, what winter camping on a continual basis comes with. But it's interesting when you're kind of just out as a student, you typically have two of that kind of perfect three trifecta. You've got energy and you've got time. The one thing I didn't have being a student was that much money. And so that was kind of your limiting factor, really. And I really did max out the overdraft on my bank account by the end of that trip.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there aren't too many cash points on top of those Munros, though, are there?
Yeah, there's a lot of fish and chip shops in between there.
I bet. Wow.
But if you treat it like a full-time job, it just plods on.
Yeah. And do you really feel is that what your life is now? Your life, I mean, obviously your life, a lot of the life that I know, because of the maps that I mean, it's worth saying to the listeners here that Will is the only person that I know that will take an Ordnance Survey map, mark it up with the major kind of sea hazards that there are, tide markers, etc., and turn it into a sea chart for kayakers. Perfect. So it's got all the detail that you have on an Ordnance Survey map that gives you all that enhanced detail of what the coastline looks like. But then you've got the detail of at what time of day you'll be sucked through or blown out of a particular inlet. It's a phenomenal feat. You can find that product actually on our website. So just look for Summer Isles, and you'll find it there. But Will, Scotland, Summer Isles, big adventure there. You take people out there on a regular basis. Is this something people can book you for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run a company called Kayak Summer Isles. You can find us on kayaksummerisles.com. And that is my day-to-day, really, from most of the year, predominantly May through till the end of October, but we will run all year. Is everything from half days, day trips, and overnight trips. And we'll take people out by sea kayak, normally into the Summer Isles, which is our local island archipelago. But we do longer expeditions out to things like the Outer Hebrides, the North Coast. I think next year we're off to Shetland, and some overseas trips as well, which are kind of pending down the line. Our next one is likely to be Norway in 2027. And that's really kind of my main day-to-day job.
I looked at your one around Cape Horn, was it? Yeah, it's around Cape Horn, and there's a nice quote that you put on your little blurb for that. Below 40 degrees, there's no law. Below 50 degrees, there's no God. So, and I looked at that and I thought, is he talking about latitude here, or is he talking about degrees centigrade? So,
it's way below 40 degrees centigrade down there. That's paraphrasing an old sailing quote, because the sailors obviously at Cape Horn used to go through absolute hell to get around there, and it's not got much better. I have to say, it's not a kind part of the world, but it is equally beautiful in that part of the world.
And I guess you've got to be smaller than most waves when you're out. Like that.
It's interesting there, actually. It's not that dissimilar to Scotland. Yes, it's a lot more remote, and the conditions are, believe it or not, wetter and windier than Scotland. But the fjords are so fractured all the way down that you can sort of pick your way along them if you have the right time and if you're patient enough to allow that. And that's a good tactic, I think, there, is being able to kind of pick your way along things rather than one mega push.
So I'm kind of asking, partly for myself, partly for my listeners, what kind of grade or how would you take along a beginner on any of the things that you're doing, or do you need to have some sort of sense of paddle ability?
So it totally depends where you're going and what you're doing. So in Scotland, the majority of our clientele are typically on the beginner end or have done a small amount of paddling, normally 30 years ago at Scouts or something. And we can totally take that. We just will pick appropriate venues and do it safely. If it's a slightly longer expedition or I'm doing more advanced coaching or something like that, then we'll have a pretty heuristic discussion about where we're at in that, and can I provide what your ambition is, and we'll find that kind of nice mesh point. In Patagonia, it's really interesting in that all the companies around Torres del Paine, where I typically work, do pretty similar itineraries at varying degrees of standard, and it's a real baptism of fire for anyone who's joining in any of the companies you go with. It is going to be the hardest start to paddling you're ever going to do if you've never paddled. But in a weird way, it's safe because of the environment and the location being a fairly enclosed river system. It allows us to put total novices into 40-knot crosswinds and spin drifts and currents and all these things that in Scotland I would probably move up and work up to with a guest, because on the sea, that's not something you could do safely. But down in Patagonia, you totally can, which is great. Because of that.
It is. I mean, I can see the map behind you, and it's a completely fractured piece of land as you get down south, isn't it? Really quite something. And we were just talking about that map behind you a few minutes ago. There's a big condor feather in the corner and various other artifacts from your adventures over there as well. It seems like Patagonia's got a very special place in your heart, but you're going even further south this year, I understand.
I am, yeah. So for the last couple of years, I've been bouncing back and forth toward, much more southerly climes, which is the Antarctic Peninsula, which, although it's very remote, is in a very different style. It's working typically as a kayaking guide, but on cruise ships. So you're traveling there in relative luxury to somewhere quite remote, and then you're delivering paddling as part of a cohesive expedition team where everyone has their own team roles. And it's a really fantastic operation that they have going there. This year, I'm well out my comfort zone. I'm not going down as a paddling guide. This year, I'm going to be an ornithologist, and so teaching people about Antarctic seabirds, which is wonderful. I'm quite looking forward to it, to be honest.
Hence the piece you were just writing about penguins when I so rudely interrupted you.
Yes, I have spent my whole day delving into penguins, which has been wonderfully interesting.
The Humboldt penguin down there, I believe, and
that's the other side. That's the other way. So still Antarctic, but the other side to where I'll be.
Oh, great! Well, we've got. You'll be the other side of it. Okay, so does that mean you're not going near Port Lockroy? That sort of.
No, I will be. Yeah, I'll be potentially visiting there. A lot of the ships do visit there. It's fascinating how it works there because it's very, like I say, it's very remote. But you have 60-something ships registered with IATO, the governing body of Antarctic tourism, and it's kind of this amazing kind of scheduling booking system thing, and you have to slot it in, and that's constantly changing and juggling. And so to actually get booked in these kind of more popular spots, it can often be a bit of a juggling game. So you never really know where you're going to go because things all change, which is kind of fun.
Well, actually. I mean, maybe it depends where the ship ends up.
It'll be on the peninsula somewhere. Yeah.
Well, when you do get down there, drop into the shop. There is a shop in Port Lockroy, would you believe?
There is. Absolutely is.
And it's our most southerly shop as well. So they sell our neck warmers like this one. Port Lockroy chart on the outside. They call it a chart rather than a map, even though it's predominantly land. There's a lot of ice sheet there, and that gets called a chart, so that's fair enough. And then on the inside of it, there's Gentoo penguins. So you can pick that up and think, David helped design that. That's great. So
amazing.
Give our regards to Port Lockroy when you're down there.
I will do. I almost certainly will visit there, so I'm going to look out for those. That'll be great fun. Fun fact for you is I actually very nearly worked there once. I once got down into the last 8 in the interview stage, and unfortunately lost out on that job because of probably my age. But that ended up getting me to Patagonia instead. So in a funny sort of world, the world goes round in circles.
Well, that's it, and they're well contested, those jobs as well. Every year, I kind of think, yeah, a bit chilly for me. But that's just me.
It's an interesting job, that.
It has to be fascinating, and all the people that we meet from the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, who are our customers down there, and the British Antarctic Survey, who we work with to make the map, the chart. Absolutely fabulous people, and it's always for me it's a great excuse to get up to Cambridge and meet them all. They haven't invited me down there yet, but we love sending the maps down there. It's the only thing that will survive really down there, and it's a part of their layering system when people go visit. So, Will, we've got a bit of a flavour for you. I think you qualify as a well-qualified adventurer with some advice to pass on, I wouldn't wonder, to our fabulous listeners. So we're going to take a quick break here and have a quick listen to something from our sponsor, and then we'll come straight back to Will and his 5 adventure habits, which he's got prepared for you. Okay, so let's take a break. So when you get a splash map, you'll notice the print on the material is super sharp. That's because when we started this business, we needed this product to be as clear as a paper map, but without any of the disadvantages of folding and getting mushy in water and mud. So this is a tight woven polyester. This is a fabric that won't stretch even when you wash it. And we'd encourage you to put it in the washing machine quite frequently. You get a key to explain exactly what you've got on the map. It's stitched with an overlock all the way round, and that's so that it will never fray around the edges. If you want to increase your adventure habit, head over to our website and set up your personalised map in whatever format you want today. Okay, the break is over. You can stop shimmying now. Okay, so well, thanks to Splash Maps for that word from our sponsors, and we're back here with Will Copestake, and we've established that he's a consummate paddler, sea kayaker, adventurer in the Antarctic, Patagonia, Scotland, of land and sea, and the occasional river. A great lover of penguins too, by the sounds of it, and as such, he is more than qualified to pass on his 5 top adventure habits, which I cautioned him to make sure were the sort of things that can help you, dear listener, become someone who adventures more often and perhaps adventures better as well. So I'm going to dive straight in this time, Will, and just ask you, what is your number 1 adventure habit?
So my number 1 adventure habit is how I structure all of my adventures from start to finish. It's a fairly common terminology that we would use in the outdoor industry, but that is to plan, do, and review your trip, and to break it into those 3 parts. So the planning stage, that's where you're going to make that picture. What's going to happen? How's it going to happen? Am I going to make it safe? How can I make it safe? And how can I come home and think about it? The doing part of that is the fun bit. You get to go out and you get to execute your adventure, and it will go how it goes. If you've done that planning stage right, even if it doesn't go quite to your plan A, it might shift to a different plan, or even a 3rd, 4th, or 5th plan. You're still going to be able to come home for that last stage, which is the reviewing stage. And that's often the bit that we miss out in adventure. We quite often come home. You might tell people about it externally. So I might go and say, I've got to done this great, big, amazing thing. But it's very often overlooked that we stop and think, what went well? What could I have done better? How could I have made that more efficient? What is my takeaway lesson, personally, or as part of a team, that I could then use to structure that next trip, to make that next trip more successful, more fun, or go as successfully as your last one hopefully did.
Great. So it really is about zoning your adventure into those three parts: the beginning, doing, the planning, the doing, and then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reviewing.
Um,
And by the sounds of it, with a bit more emphasis on the review, so that when you come to do it again or something similar, it will be better.
Yeah, and I think the one kind of overall thing that I would encompass all of that with is in your planning, your doing, and your reviewing is be patient throughout it. So don't rush any stage of that. You can, if you can plan time into all three of those stages, time gifts you the ability to sit things out, wait, to make sensible and informed decisions that will get you to the best possible outcome. In the planning stage, that's having the time to do the planning properly. In the doing stage, for
Mm.
example, as a paddler, if I am paddling 30 kilometers a day every day or 40 kilometers a day every day, I'm going to plan my trip to be 25k a day. And so I can quite quickly bank time. And if the weather gets beyond what I'm comfortable with or marginal, I don't have that pressure to then go out when I
Yeah.
don't need to. And the same in the reviewing. If I'm patient and I sit down and I consciously have a discussion, be it with the people I was with, or if you're on your own, if it's a solo trip, have a kind of reflective think. Taking that time is a good part of that.
And is that can you think of a kind of review that's actually changed significantly something that you've done a second time you've gone around?
Yeah, I mean, there's countless ones that you could think of. Really, now that I have said that, I'm trying to pick one out of thin air. What was one that I did recently? I went out camping recently, and I did my plan. It was going to be so long. Did the trip, and then I got out there, and I realised that the gas can that I had leaked, and I didn't have
Oh,
nearly as much gas as I thought I was going to have, which wasn't planned. It happened on the trip, but then that left
mm,
me with not enough gas, and so thankfully I could improvise and make a fire and do that responsibly on
yeah.
the beach and cook. But my review for next time would be maybe don't put all my eggs in one basket and take two smaller gas cans rather than one big one. And so
Yeah, it's
that
the old
might affect how
trade-off
I pack
between
next time. Yeah.
there's the old
Um,
trade-off between weight and benefits and all of that sort of stuff. Okay,
totally,
well look,
totally. Yeah.
that's a great number one. I'm not sure if I can put it into one line, but it seems to be to split your whole adventure into those three parts: the planning, the doing, and the reviewing. And that
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
allow time in each one. Yeah, I particularly like the idea that if you want to actually do 30 kilometers a day, then plan to it or yeah, plan to do
Yeah.
25 kilometers. Leave yourself with not having to beat the tide home, etc. So
Yeah, and
um, so
I'm saying this very much in an adventure aspect. I mean, there are obviously different people will want different motivations. If you're going for a world record or something, which is not really my interest, that
yeah.
might be a slightly more tighter plan.
Yeah, but this is this is the adventure habits. This is about adventure. So you hit the nail right on
Totally.
the head with
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
So what would you say your second adventure habit is?
So my second one is a much more kind of practical one, specifically for kayaking, but also it can be for winter hill walking, any aspect of the outdoors, and that is good dry management. Now, what I mean by dry management is separating your out on the field and in at the tent systems so that you can maintain I call it a bubble of comfort, which is a dry, guaranteed dry, warm area that you can retreat to, come what may, come what weather. And that management really comes through discipline in how you treat your day side of things. How am
Mm,
I packing my equipment? Am I using dry bags? Do I need to use double dry bags? If I'm on a budget, I might choose to put my sleeping bag in a bin bag, and then that inside the sleeping bag, and then inside a dry bag, which will be a perfectly good dry system rather than having to spend a fortune on dry bags. Am I going to choose to have a wet set of gear? Am I going to choose to have a separate dry set of gear for my tent and then just have to suffer putting damp gear on in the morning? Is my pacing during the day allowing me not to get full of sweat? So am I going up the hill so fast that I'm breathing heavy and sweating, at which point my dry management's going to mean I'm wet even on a sunny day, and then the next morning I'm going to have to put that wet kit on? Or can I pace down where I'm not going to be sweating? Or am I paddling at a point that I'm not going to be sweating? That helps keep that a little bit better. Now, realistically,
I
would
so
say
seldom
as
do
a
that.
paddler, you will get wet. Yeah. It's something that's worth really thinking about. And I would say on kind of longer paddling things, particularly the stuff I've done in Chile and in Patagonia, it is pretty impossible to stay completely dry on paddling trips extended beyond a few days because of the climate, the conditions, the air humidity. You will just get wet, and so for me, that dry management there becomes a wet bubble, dry bubble scenario. I'm getting into damp kit that I know is still going to be warm enough to be safe and comfortable, and that layering system of my kit provides that. I tend to use things like wool or cashmeres that will generate a little bit of heat even when they're wet. And then I'm really disciplined with my teammate Seamus that we get out of that and into dry kit before we enter the inner tent. So that is a completely separate system.
And then presumably
so
that stuff can dry off in some way in front of a fire or something overnight, or
that's the theory. Realistically, it doesn't. You just have to put wet undies on in the morning, and that is just part of the sacrifice you make out there. But you know that's only going to be for 8 hours, and when you get back in the tent, it's going to be dry again.
But I think
you trade that
it's
off.
It's all a great idea, and particularly if you're adventuring in a climate like you're saying, where the water comes from without, but it also comes from within. The kit choice counts for a lot, and when you're in a kayak, you really are very exposed. I would imagine so. More so than if you're hiking. But yeah, great one. I shall be thinking about that. In particular, that balance between, having a pace that means that you're actually going for it. So you are going to get a bit hot, probably a bit sweaty. In a cold climate, you're probably going to have quite a few layers on. So that wet, dry management, you have to think about that, even for walking up a challenge, a challenging hill, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, that's number 2. What's your third adventure habit you'll pass on?
So I've put this down as pack your ego at home, but I think I'm going to kind of expand that into understand the application of ego in the outdoors. Ego can be a good thing. It can fuel you to want to do an adventure, or it can fuel you to have an idea or motivate someone. But it's something that we need to be aware of, that there are times when you need to get your ego and leave it at home. And in that way, don't get task fixated on something that you've said you're going to do. Have a second plan A, a third plan A. I don't like plan Bs. I like sort of first, second, third plan As because they're all quite as good as each other.
I was intrigued by the terminology.
Yeah. You never pick a plan B because plan B is always worse. But if you have a second plan A, you might. But the idea is that if I go and, for example, if I go and make a big social media thing, I'm going to go and set the fastest record down this, let's say, down a river. I've got loads of sponsors lined up. I've shouted about it loads. Everything's all set. Before I even start the trip, then I've already loaded myself with some social pressure that I'm going to do it come what may. And that is going to affect how I'm going to make decision-making on the trip. And so that might end up pushing you into heuristic traps where I might make a dangerous decision. personally, I think it's much better if you're going to do something like that is to use that idea of coming up with a trip, go and do the adventure, and then if you want to talk about it afterwards, you've done something that you might be proud of, you might want to talk about. That's great. Don't necessarily stack it all up right at the start, because it's going to end up biting you in the ass at some point.
It's a difficult one for and every different adventurer must come up against this, because as you were saying earlier on, you maxed out your overdraft, etc., doing your adventures back in 2015 and 16. People need money to do these adventures, even if it takes them outside of society for a long time. You need the money, and so getting sponsors is very, very tempting. But then you're literally a hostage to what they want to do. I've just finished reading Jamie Ramsey's Run the Americas, and there's this section in it where he's running and he's pushing this 3-wheeled trolley in front of him basically the whole way, and he's got to go across the Andes to get to his sponsors, Microsoft, who are waiting for him on the other side of the Andes. And it's got to a point where he's promised them that he'll be able to get to the end point at New Year's Day, and he's pressed himself so that he's got to cover plus marathon distances every single day with this bloody trolley. And he gets that across beautifully, And you get the impression if he had his time again, he wouldn't have done it that way. And that's exactly what you're kind of saying here.
And it's all about different thresholds, isn't it? I personally think there's an awful lot of the adventure community now is very focused on fastest and firsts and things you can shout about. I'm sort of inclined to go on about do casual adventure, go and just tramp somewhere and do something. It doesn't have to be a big grand thing on a budget. If you are going to go overseas and you do need that sort of sponsorship and you do need to shout about it before, try and find a separation policy where you're not completely 100% committed. Don't say I'm going to do this exact thing exactly this time, exactly this day. Give yourself windows so you can make sensible choices.
I like that.
Have you heard of heuristic traps? Heuristic traps. They're the kind of
no, that's not a concept I've come across.
It's amazing. We all fall into them in every concept of life. If I talk about it in the kind of outdoor sense, you can break them down into different things. So familiarity, for example, if I let's say the river that I paddle in my local town, I go down it probably once a week through the summer, and it's very easy for me to get on that, drop off the top waterfall. Because I was there yesterday, it was absolutely fine, but I might drop over that waterfall and the tree might have fallen down in there, and all of a sudden I'm going to get stuck in the tree, and that's going to be the end of me. And so that's one example. Or commitment to something, which would be this kind of sponsorship thing. I've committed to a goal and I'll be damned if I don't do it. Whereas actually, do I really need to? Social proof's another one. So I'm out with a group of mates. All of them scramble up a hill. I'm not really that confident with doing that, but all my mates have done it, so I'm going to follow them. And then I slipped and I hurt myself. Expert halo. So if I'm out with a group who are all really experienced, it's quite often that if you're out with a group of peers that you all switch your head off because you all assume the other one's planned it. And that can often lead to really interesting scenarios because you might have a really experienced group, but no one's thinking. And so you need to delineate before you trip who's in charge. And then that last one on the heuristic list is scarcity. And that's that, has what I'm trying to achieve been really hard to get to? And is that affecting my decision? And the classic one of that example would be Everest climbers and that summit fever. It's been really hard for you to get to that point, and the Sherpas at the top saying, you need to turn around now, but the summit's 200 meters away, and you go, no, I'm going to carry on. And how many times have you heard that story where they do that, and that's it? And that's that kind of last pressure. But I would encourage anyone listening to go and have a look at heuristic traps. And ego definitely comes in as part of that package.
I was going to say, it's
on
like
those
you've
mistakes we made.
divided ego up into those 5.
Yeah,
They're not deadly sins, but they're kind of deadly traps, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's great. So it's to recognise you got an ego, and that it will bring you. It can bring you forward. It can be a useful thing, but don't let it trap you into commitments that you can't make. And I guess, in a way, I've
Totally.
been thinking about, adventure commitments, etc., and how we can improve those, increase them in our lives. But in the series of 20 interviews that we've had so far, it crops up quite a lot. Commitment is what you need to have an adventure. I like to think that not your first commitment, an early commitment is actually getting the maps out, and you start seeing exactly
Yeah.
where you're going to be. You get your first realization of what the ground is like. And I can see how important it is to have that right level of commitment. And I like what you're saying, that if it is if it's a world first, or a Guinness record, or a goal of some sort that's outside of your control, you're more likely to quickly drop into those 5 heuristic traps.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
that's great. That's a nice one to think about. What about the fourth one?
So the fourth one is basing this off a kind of phrase that my dad used to say. My dad worked in South Georgia back in the 80s. Was subsequently evacuated when the Falklands War started, but he was a scientist down there. And in those days, you were positioned off in a hut, and you were there for 2 years, and you would have 4 of you in this tiny little hut, and you'd have to live with each other. And it's a sort of mantra I've tried to keep through my adult life, which is to just be tolerable, be somebody that you feel that somebody else would be able to spend their time in a tent or in a hut with you and not be driven mad. And that often comes with listening and compromising, and not necessarily always the best way, but just try and be a decent human being that is listenable to and not insufferable to sit in a tent with.
I can empathize with that. It's no fun to share a tent with someone who's just totally grumpy or whatever. It's and if you can look out for that in yourself, then and there must be points where frictions through the day can actually get into that
totally,
that
yeah.
important
And who
social
you
bit,
select, yes, that social aspect. Who you pick to be sharing these trips with often is, for me anyway, I often base it with how much can I get on with them, especially under pressure, and likewise I would want them to want to try and get on with me. But yeah, try and kind of sit in the middle personality band. High opinions, both sides of the spectrum, grumpy or thinking you're brilliant, tend to make frictions. Try and compromise there.
I think that's good. That makes for happy campers. And what's your fifth and final adventure habit?
My fifth and final adventure habit is the final thing that you should do on any trip, and that is to check and maintain your equipment thoroughly. And I know that friends of mine are going to laugh at this because I'm incredibly hard on equipment. Definitely have been known to have
we'd noticed
that's at the end. Not particularly kind on gear, but the harder you are on gear, the harder you should check it. Really good example of this was quite early on in my paddling days. We went out for the first time in the winter paddling, and my friend took a swim in a kayak, and so managed to get out of the kayak and get my throw line out, and you cast the first meter out and then you throw it. And bear in mind, my friend's swimming in a rapid at this point, getting tumbled about in the river. What happened was my throw bag, which had been in a box all summer, flew off towards him with a great big puff of fluff of disintegrated rope, and a rather annoyed mouse sat in the middle of it, flying towards him. Thankfully, I had a second throw line, which wasn't completely destroyed by a mouse, but that would have been utterly avoided had I checked my equipment before
Can I
going
suggest
out.
a sixth habit, which might be to be careful about where you're storing your kit?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, that was a pretty valuable lesson, that one. Thankfully, it all
I love
ended well.
this
But
picture of
yeah,
this mouse flying through the air and
good.
disintegrated
Yeah.
remains of a rope.
Yeah.
And presumably your friend survived?
Fred was fine, and the mouse, you will be pleased to hear, was also fine. It scurried off up the bank somewhere. Admittedly, sans its house.
It's fantastic. I mean, I'm going to chip in here because when I first met you, I think you'd already got a splash map from us before you wanted to talk about getting the tides and stuff marked in on it. And you sent us a beautiful little video, and you just had this one of our maps stuffed inside your BCG for months, and it had been in seawater and whatever, and it came out, and you just said, "Look, it's fine."
It was fine. Yeah, yeah. I expected it to get mouldy or something, but it didn't. Yeah, that's actually still using that map. Still going strong.
It should last you a lifetime. There, it's an heirloom for you for all the Copestakes that come after you.
That's it. Yeah. No, it's still going great. Actually, it's still in my pocket, I think.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, those are 5 brilliant habits. I'm going to do a quick recap, and you can correct me if I've got any of them wrong. But
shoot, go for it.
The first habit is really to split that your whole adventure into 3 parts. There's planning, there's actually executing the thing, and there's recapping on it. And each of those require patience and time, and not being too overly optimistic with your time, particularly in the execution stage, but also really important to apply a lot of time into that reviewing process, because that's the only way any of us get better at doing anything. An adventure, I guess, is just the same, right? Absolutely. And then the next one is dry management. Make sure that for your chosen adventure, you are taking the right steps to make sure that you've got that nice cozy bubble to come back to in the evenings, even if you have to put wet pants on the next. Such a lovely part of the adventure.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Number 3 is, rather than park the ego at home, it's actually be aware of the ego, and I like the psychology behind that. I'm going to be reading about heuristic traps immediately after this as well, Will, and looking out for those whenever
it's a great wormhole.
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone listening, go and read them, and then try and pick a point in your life you've made each one, because I guarantee you'll have made one of them for each one.
There's a lot of them rising up to the surface for me at the moment.
Yeah.
And the next one is to be tolerable. I mean, what else should we choose to be in this world but tolerable? But I mean, this is for sharing your spaces and whatever when you're actually adventuring. I think we all recognise that we're somewhere near the extreme on either end of any of those spectra, and trying to position yourself close to the middle, even if it is just for a short time, is going to mean you get on better with the other people in the team, right? And then check and maintain the equipment. You don't want to be throwing mice at your friends when you should be throwing ropes, right?
Yeah, they don't appreciate it, funnily enough.
No, not at all. So, Will, I just, in my mind, I've got this. I want to encourage people, first and foremost, to go to your Instagram. Just remind me, is that which one would you point them for those fabulous photographs and all of that stuff?
Probably the at Will Copestake one, which is Copestake. If not, if you want to see my paddling business stuff, at Kayak Isles, or you can find our website at kayaksummerisles.com. I do have a website as well, but I haven't updated it in years, so you're probably better on my Instagram, to be honest.
Okay, that seems to be the way that a lot of things are going at the moment, and so Instagram is the best way to engage with you. Anything on TikTok or anything like that?
I have managed to escape TikTok so far, but you can probably find me on Facebook as well under the same name. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram.
Okay. So we'll push people in that direction. We'll put the links in the show notes as well. And when you look at Will's Instagram, Scroll down about five. If you go today, I think scroll down about 5 or 6 images, and you will find a nice picture of him actually sailing. A rare picture of Will sailing. Don't worry, folks. He's still in his kayak. He's actually holding up a splash map and taking the lazy approach to getting home, which is using the splash map as a sail. And the wonderful thing is, only the day after you sent me that picture, there was a lovely picture from World War II of an American submarine that had run out of juice mid-Atlantic.
Awesome.
And they brought out all the sheets into a great big sail, put the periscope up, and they sailed the submarine home. So that made me think
the splash map made a surprisingly good map. Not map sail. It was a really good sail. It held the wind.
Well, it's just another. I think that's the 101st use of a splash map that we've come across on this so far. So really grateful to you for that. Will, you're an absolutely terrific bloke, and we're so proud to supply you with maps for your various adventures. I really encourage people, if you want to take an adventure at any level, by the sounds of it, with Will, you won't find anyone better in the country to take you around these fabulous places. And just have a look at the Instagram. You'll be sold on it. Head up to the Summer Isles, presumably next summer, and get in touch with Will. Okay, well,
amazing.
I think
look forward to seeing you out there.
Well, and I'm still hoping to get up there. We're still hoping to get you. I know it's a long way away, but we still hope to get you down for the Armchair Adventure Festival at some point.
That'd be great. That sounds fun. Yeah,
it would be a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much. And have you got anything else you want to shout out?
No, just go and have fun. Yeah, go and enjoy the world, people.
Go out and enjoy people. Okay. Thanks so much, Will. Goodbye.
Take care.